Welcome to part two. We're joined by Adam. Yeah, you were saying, Adam.
Yeah, well, just in terms of I'm not saying any of this. I'm the last man to judge anybody in terms of, obviously what's going on. But look, it doesn't take it. You don't have to be a doctor or a psychiatrist to figure out the Fury's going through it. If you've seen them videos. And it's all well and good that it's easy to be in somebody's entourage when they're going to be undisputed and they're winning the belts and they're fighting in Vegas. It's easy to be around them then, but I think it's blatantly obvious that this is the time where Tyson Fury needs people that care about him around him. When he's struggling, when the chips are down, which they obviously are. I know we talked a lot, and look, he says a lot of daft stuff and all the rest. Um, and I think his resume is well overrated and stuff, but at the same time, it doesn't bring me any joy whatsoever to see him in the state that he's in. And like I said, I think this is where people, he needs good people that care about him and that he cares about around him. And, I don't think the vultures should be circling and, trying to rub his back. Like the likes of Greasy, I always come back to Gad, but like he's the pound for pound king of, of liquors and people that have their own agenda. So I don't think that the vultures should be circling and using this bad situation to try and get back in his pocket. But yeah, I don't know, mate. I mean, I was kind of apprehensive on whether we saw Usyk Fury 2 at all. And that was if he was right back in camp and, just trying to get straight back at it and staying focused.
Yeah.
But it seems like it doesn't seem he's obviously off the rails. And I think that's what he needs to look at first before whether he gets back into boxing or not. I think he needs to get it sorted between the ears and figure out what he wants to do. Because I think, Terry talked about this a lot in one of his recent episodes about, the pressure that Fury's felt since he's been a young fella. We've seen it with Tommy with the whole Jake Paul thing, where John Fury's coming on saying, "Oh, my son, I'll disown him, and he has to change his name, and I don't want to. He won't be allowed back in my house if he loses to Jake Paul." Um, Obviously, social media wasn't around when Tyson Fury was a young fella, but I think it's obvious that there's been pressure put on them all from a young age. Um, and I think that's what's kind of getting to Tyson now. He's had people around him put pressure on him his whole life. Out of that, he's put pressure on himself. Obviously by talking about Usyk, the pumped up middleweight, Sean Porter, the loss, all that. And now he's the person that this loss has fallen on in terms of what he said, and obviously just losing in general and losing the O. So these people that have been putting pressure on him his whole life, probably, i.e. John Fury's top of that pile, they're the people that should be around him now. And, spending days with them and just getting them, not forcing them back into the ring, but just trying to help them figure out. I'm not trying to turn this into a therapy session, this podcast or this episode, man, but trying to get him to figure out what he truly wants to do for himself and his family. Not what Big John wants him to do or not what Frank Warren wants him to do. If these people really, really care about them, like they all say that they do, then, help him to figure out what's best for him, whether that's walking away or whether that's getting back in the ring or not. So yeah, man, look, not a good situation on any front for Big Tyson at the moment.
Do you think he fights Usyk next?
I don't. No.
Why not?
Well, I think it's retirement or Usyk too. Obviously the money, the deal that's already been signed, all that. But yeah, I think either. Yeah, I think it's Usyk too or bust, man. I honestly do. I don't think he takes the risk of fighting AJ. I mean, look, the only two fights that anybody are really clamoring for Tyson Fury at the minute are Usyk, obviously as a top priority, and then AJ because it's a big domestic fight that we've never gotten. I think outside of that, obviously there's good fighters in the heavyweight division, but I don't think anything else really moves the needle outside of those two fights. I don't think he takes the risk. Like he's already lost to Usyk once, and people are talking about Usyk as pound for pound number one. This great of the game, which he is. I completely agree with it all. So if you go in there and you lose again to Usyk, you know, and you don't go into it this time saying he's a pumped up middleweight, you can say, look, thought I've had a great career. I've lost to this guy. He's a generational great. You know, there's no real shame in it. Whereas if you go in there and you get beat up by AJ, who you've called a pumped up bodybuilder, you know, and all this stuff your whole career, you almost have to go in, you almost fall into the same trap again as you did with Usyk, where it'll be hard to live it down when you've said you'd smash up AJ your whole career. So I don't think you'll take the AJ risk, at least not next. So I think, man, I think it's Usyk 2 or bust. But unless he gets things together very, very quickly, you know, whether the fight happens at all, but like if they're supposed to fight in December, he needs to get his act together quickly in terms of getting back in the gym and start working. Apparently he's cleared out the team, so he needs to find a new team and all that. So gun to my head today, do I think he fights Usyk in December? I don't, not at all. But I think if he does fight again, it's Usyk 2, or he retires. So what do you reckon, man?
Me personally, Adam, I think that Tyson Fury shot himself in foot. They kept moving goalposts for 2 years with Usyk. They kept delaying it. Didn't they pull out 2 or 3 times?
I think 3 times total.
3
yes,
times,
sir.
right? If you keep putting a fight back like that, you don't want to fight. I remember somebody at school who were going to fight this kid. Every other week they were going to fight. It just never happened. And I thought, well, one of them don't want it because one kid was there with top off every day at 3:45 at Gates, and I was there saying, "Come on, let's get him, scrap, scrap, scrap." You know, like you do when you're at school. I was there every night with him, and this kid just didn't want to have it. And I thought that was Tyson. But like I said, do you remember a few years ago when I was sat in Peter's gym and there were me, John Fury, Peter, Tyson, Robin Reed, Dave Allen, a few of us. And, you know, just chewing fat after training session, you know, because they all go over to that sandwich shop over the road. I think it's Margaret's, is it, on Halliwell Road, Bolton. They used to go there, but we're all chewing fat and that. You know, what they think to certain fighters going through, you know, going back 20, 30 years and blah, de, blah. Then I mentioned Usyk's name. You remember what I said, don't you? When I mentioned it, they all looked at me and they all did an impression of an owl. Every single one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And usually when you mention a name, Tyson will go, he's a dosser, he's a bomb, I'll knock him out, he's this, he's that. When I mentioned Usyk's name, they all put their heads down, mate, and did an owl impression, and not a peep come out Tyson. I remember driving home with Dave Allen thinking, wow, why didn't Tyson turn around and say, I'll knock Usyk out, he's just a little middleweight. He never said that. They were like, he didn't want him in his head.
Yeah.
There was something about it. I don't know what it were, but there was just something there. I don't know if it's word of mouth, because I remember all them guys from Team GB back in the day, they all used to rave about Lomachenko and Usyk. I remember Macklin and a few other kids saying that they went down, some at Smith's, they went down to watch Lomachenko at pads and bags. They were just sat, Frankie Gavin and all them, they were just sat watching him. So if Lomachenko would have been there, Usyk would have been there. Now, when I mentioned Usyk's name, all I could hear was squeaks out their assholes, all of them. And I looked at Peter and he just said, Usyk is a very serious operator. That's what Peter said as he were walking into the kitchen. And I took something from that this Usyk's a serious guy. Do you know what I mean? That's what
absolutely.
That's what I took from it. So that's why I put my bet on Usyk, because I saw chinks in armour. Seen it, mate. And I've seen it with Beterbiev with people as well from that division. You know, people who are around about his weight. People, ooh, Beterbiev. Do you see where I'm coming from? And Beterbiev and Usyk are pound for pound undefeated. They don't shoot the mouths off. And they've wiped the floor with everybody they've fought. So do you think that Fury kept pulling out and messing about and all that? Do you think in end it was a confidence problem, Adam?
I do. Yeah, I think that was a huge factor. I think, you know, a lot of the times, you see this in boxing and MMA, I think a lot of the times when people are saying things, they're trying to convince themselves, you know, they're trying to kind of light that fire of confidence and kind of reassure themselves. Look, Tyson Fury knows he's boxing, zero doubt about it. Peter Fury, you know, obviously it's unarguable. So these guys know what they're looking at. obviously the amateur game in terms of what goes on in gyms, it's not as talked about as the pro game. But there's been murmurs about this Usyk guy. Obviously everyone's heard about the Klitschko sparring and what he was able to do to Vlad back then and all the rest. So
Battered him, didn't he? Battered
yeah,
him.
yeah,
Put him through ropes, didn't he, in front of all world media?
completely, man. So this just, people on the inside, the likes of Peter Fury and stuff, I kind of rate him. Obviously, I rate him as a trainer. He seems like a very wise man now in these years. These guys know what they're looking at and they know who they should be worried about. And it's not just a thing of talent. We've seen hundreds of super talents down through, not hundreds, but we've seen loads of super talents down through the years that just didn't have the commitment, the discipline, the mental strength. And I think someone like Peter Fury probably looking at Usyk back in the day and it's like, right, this guy, he's got skills to pay the bills. He's mentally unbreakable. He's never out of the gym. He takes care of himself. He's just, he cares about what should be important, family, tradition, all that stuff. So like they probably look at someone like that and they're like, this guy's the full package. He's not going to lie down and you're not going to be able to break him a mind game. So they're probably looking at that and they're like, this guy's dangerous. Not probably, they were. So I would say, man, from early doors, this is probably a fight they never wanted. And I think, yeah, towards the end, I think the moving of the goalpost was definitely that from Fury. He was just trying to make things unreasonable with the terms that were offered in 80-20. And, there was no hoop that Usyk wasn't willing to jump through. And I think when you see another guy jump through all the hoops, that's going to scare you as well. Because you're like, this guy's up, he's accepting terrible terms when he has 3 belts. He's accepting new dates. He's accepting this. He's accepting that. So, yeah, man, I don't think, I think a lot of the talk from Tyson Fury was him trying to just give himself that confidence. And obviously, look, it wasn't enough on the night. So, look, people have known what Usyk's about for a long, long time. Same as Beterbiev, same with Lomachenko. There's certain talents that come through, like I said, that are just a full package from top to bottom that tick all the boxes. And those are the guys you got to worry about, So, yeah, I think, I'm not saying they knew Tyson would definitely lose, but I think they knew that this would likely, if Usyk ever did move up, this would be one of Tyson's toughest fights. So, and it proved to be.
Julian called it, didn't he?
He did. He did very early. So did you? This George Groves, man. I remember him.
Well,
George Groves.
That was sat watching Usyk on bag with Loma and them Groves.
Right, there you go. There you go. I remember, man, he was the first big British. I say big, I mean like
Groves was the first one to come out and say it was a cakewalk for Usyk, wasn't it?
Yeah, and people looked at him like he had 3 heads. They were like, what is this guy talking about? And I remember hearing that at the time. Because look, George Groves, obviously a great fighter and stuff, but like you say, he loves the game. He was around the whole time, but there was no doubt in his mind. He was like, I tell you, I'll back Usyk 100 times out of 100. And, even people joked it, made fun of him and slanted him for it. And I'm sure, he lost some privileges in saying that, but this was 3-4 years ago when it wasn't fashionable at all. Usyk was a big underdog with the bookies. He saw it, man, so. And the likes of Julian, people that know the game and have the inside scoop and aren't afraid to speak their mind, they were calling this a long time out. So proved to be, proved to be.
Win, didn't he, Usyk as well?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And
Bellew. Yeah, I mean, I think, look, Big Tony, obviously, Tony Bellew had, that built in that he had lost to him. So obviously you want the guy you lost to win. But I think as more time passed by, like even before the Ngannou fight, which I think was a big factor, in breaking Tyson Fury's confidence, even before that, as the fight grew closer and people saw Usyk kind of build into heavyweight, I think the pendulum started to shift and people kind of saw it's like, all right, maybe the size disadvantage isn't going to be a big problem. And, and like I said, proved to be. So, I mean, even if Tyson was back in the gym the Monday morning after he had lost to Usyk, I still would have fancied Usyk to win. But the fact that what has happened with Tyson and the video and all the rest, the fact that that has played out, I mean, I don't know what price Usyk is with the bookies now, but it has to have shortened an awful lot more after the last couple of weeks. I would assume so anyway.
Do you think all the head games that they tried to play with Usyk over the last 2 years, do you think and they've done their own heads in?
I think so, man. Yeah. I mean, like I've said a couple of times, I think it put pressure on Tyson and it put pressure on his resume, and it just opened him up to not criticism, but it opened him up. People were looking at his wins a lot more, and obviously Joe Park.
Put that video. Do you remember what I'd been banging on about for years, and then nobody said no. They all said I were crackers, and then Carl Froch put the same thing, same video out, didn't it? That I'd been saying. About
Yes,
how many
sir.
wins he had over champions and this and that. And nobody had ever dissected it like me. But I didn't think I got the credit. Carl put it out, and obviously he's got the platform, hasn't he? And then everybody were like, yeah, Porky's right after all, weren't they? Do you see where I'm coming from?
No, I do, mate. It aged well. It aged perfectly.
Okay.
No, yeah, go
Okay.
ahead.
So we don't reckon it happens, but there's 40 million reasons for it to happen for Tyson, isn't there? Because he's not going to leave 40 million on the table, surely to God, is he?
No, I doubt it. Like I said, my doubt, if he fights again, he fights Usyk. My doubts now are whether it happens in December or not.
Mm.
But I do think, look, I think, oh, I don't know, mate. It's a lot of money, and you've already lost to him. And people now are talking about Usyk, and rightly so, like he's the second coming. So
Mm.
I think now, even the Tyson Fury haters have kind of they've seen a new bow or a new string to Usyk's bow. You know what I mean? Like all the answers now, oh, Tyson's too big and all those are all out the window. So I think now if you go into him and you lose again, I think it hurts a lot less. And you can kind of be that magnanimous after the fact and just say, look, obviously I gave this guy loads of abuse. He proved to be a lot better than I thought he was, and he proved to be a lot mentally and physically stronger than I thought he was. So yeah, look, we probably see it early 2025. I'm 50-50 coin flip. But it would be a bad way if you're Tyson Fury, it'd be a bad way to retire with all these videos coming out. You have your first loss, obviously the video comes out of you falling about the place, and then you kind of go quietly into the night. I don't know. And then, like you say, plus 40 million quid is 40 million quid and no taxation on it because
Mm.
it's in Saudi. So lot of money, buddy. Lot of money to leave out there. Even he's filthy rich already. Doesn't matter that much. 40 million quid, still 40 million quid. So probably happens.
Okay. Johnny Horsecock. He's been roasted by UK media for his comments on Fury. Do you think it's a bit harsh what they've been doing to him? The guard, Spencer Oliver, Simon Jordan, all setting about Horsecock. What do you think?
Yeah, more of the same what we spoke about earlier. I think
Yeah.
I think people are doing it less out of the love and care for Tyson and more just because they're trying to stay on the right side of the tracks. I think it's per form, but I'm very similar to you and me kind of opinion on Jordan, where when he first came in, he was saying all the right things. It seemed like he genuinely cared about he said, oh, I'm going to get into boxing, but I'm not going to say what it is. And obviously that hasn't been mentioned now in over a year.
Yeah.
But he had his matchups with Eddie Hearn. He had two cracks at it.
He lost. He went Norton too.
He did absolutely. He was, in my opinion, he was unprepared. Don't get me. Simon Jordan talks very well, but I think it's a lack of preparation that done him. He's a Joe G on multiple times. He was talking big before Joe G got on the camera, and then he wilted. So anytime any of these people are put in front of him, whether it's lack of preparation, lack of minerals, whatever it is, he seems to falter. And now, plus, he's just contradicting himself. So, yeah, I just stick to the football or stick to whatever else. I think the boxing, even that, everybody now, obviously he had his haters from Matchroom and Queensbury and all the rest, but I think everybody's starting to sour on him. He's just saying the right things when he thinks he needs to say them. So yeah, I think this is more born out of him trying to keep himself on side with Frank and everybody else. And I don't really take him too seriously anymore at all. So the likes of, look, Gad, send him to Alaska. He's just no appreciation or respect for that man at all. You know what I mean? He's he could have starred in the Human Centipede with all the licking he's doing. So no, you can think what you want about Johnny Nelson, but I think look, everybody in boxing plays games. That's kind of the game itself. But I think he says what he means a lot more than the rest of them, and that in itself I can respect and get behind. So, no, they're just making noise to stay on side, pal, in my opinion.
Okay. Joe G and Shane McGuigan, are they the top two guys in the country at the moment?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, just proven.
Yeah. Who's the greatest cruiserweight of all time? David A, Evander Holyfield, or Usyk?
I gotta, yeah, I gotta go. I gotta flip a coin between Usyk and Holyfield. Hay was brilliant. Like I think he's a clear third. Um, and I think it gets a lot of unwarranted criticism. I mean, like that fight he lost against Bellew, the first one, like he completely ruptured his Achilles. And I gave him guff. When David Hay talked about busting his toe against Vlad, I thought he shouldn't have brought it up in the ring after, but whatever. This lad completely ruptured his Achilles and still somehow went out there for a round and a half. Which is just I can't actually get my mind around how he did that. So David Hay's a tough man. He was a very good boxer. Great, fast hands, very powerful, good to watch. But I think, yeah, it's a coin flip between Holyfield and Usyk. I mean, when it comes to pure boxing, I probably give Usyk the nod. But when it comes to being a complete fighter, like the dog, just being able to grit it out, maybe I give the nod to Holyfield. But it's a coin flip, mate. Definitely a coin flip.
Okay. Tank and Dunlap Frank Martin is now 30, 28 on Button Moon. Bob Arum's talking about Tank and Loma, but said talks have begun. I remember him saying Pacquiao and Mayweather talks have begun, but that were about 8 years before they fought, wasn't it? Do you think Bob Arum will be alive when Tank fights Loma?
I don't. So I think Shakur Stevenson has 2 fights left with Top Rank. I think, or maybe it's 1. I'm pretty sure it's 2. So obviously Bob Arum's going to want to keep fights and money within in-house if he can. So what I think is more likely is Shakur fights next time out, and then they try and feed Loma to Shakur. In terms of obviously Loma, it'll be an extra year probably until they fight. A little bit older, reaction speed goes down. And even if Loma does pull a rabbit out of a hat like he did against Haney, the judges are going to be on the side of Shakur, younger guy, American, Olympic, all the rest. So no, I don't know. I mean, talking specifically about Tank, BoxRec have him in at number 3 pound for pound, and they have Usyk at 12.
BoxRec have got Usyk at 12, and he's undisputed at cruiserweight and heavyweight.
And heavyweight, and he's number 12, pal, in the pound for pound. Oh, it's absolutely barbaric. Now, I've said it on here before, don't get me wrong, I think Tank is phenomenal from top to bottom. I think his ring IQ is phenomenal. He's obviously got power in both hands. Brilliant fighter. I think him and Inoue are going to swap pound for pound number 1 and 2. After we get a Usyk retirement, a Bud Crawford retirement, Beterbiev. So I think like pound for pound over the next 5 years, for me, anyway, you're going to have a toss-up between Inoue and Tank. If Tank starts going for legacy, which I'll get to in a second. And then I think you'll have probably Bam Bam Rodriguez in there, 3 and 4, potentially with like a David Benavidez, maybe. Obviously, look, there's some other younger, you've Shakur Stevenson, if he starts getting bigger fights and stuff. But having Tank in at number 3 now, I think, as good as I rate him, I think it's well off the mark. Because as good as he is, he hasn't chased legacy so far. Look, I know he's had belts and I know he's won and all the rest. But Frank Martin was. Look, I think he broke Frank Martin at the first press conference. He said something to him. So Frank Martin was talking about all the rest. The boys were going back and forth arguing, and Tank said, I see all these videos of you spending time in the club. He goes, you don't, you haven't been at boxing long enough to be in the club. He goes, I started boxing when I was 5. You started up when you were 14. He goes, you don't know this game. You shouldn't be in the clubs now at all. I remember looking at Frank Martin when he said that, man, and it was almost like a light bulb went off in his head. And he kind of realized what Tank was saying was very true. And then obviously in the last face off, he flinched and stuff when Tank, people say, oh, that's, whatever. But you're going to war with a fella. He shouldn't be making you flinch at the last weigh-in. But I do think Frank Martin with a rehydration clause, you saw him on the scales. He looked like a dying man. Tank Davis walked in there comfortably, 1.5 pounds under the weight limit. He obviously boiled down Ryan Garcia. So when I say chasing legacy, I don't think the deck has always been stacked in Tank's favor. And look, he's the A side. People can say it's a business and you can do what you want. So for Tank to be there and at number 3 where he is now, I think there's 3 sets of options, and I'm going to list them in the order where I prioritize them. He either fights Lomachenko or Stevenson next at 135 pounds. Now, I don't see it for the factors I brought up. I think Bob Arum's going to try and keep Loma and Shakur together. So I don't necessarily think that happens. But I would love to see it. Those are the best 2 fights for him, obviously at 135. The next option I would like to see would be, and this people probably think this sounds insane, but for Tank to move back to 130. He makes 135 so easily. He's a naturally smaller man at the weight. I think the reason he's not still at 130, potentially because of the fights that are available. But, Tank, obviously, he's done a lot of drinking, partying. He's a bit of a madman. I don't think he's kept himself in pristine condition through his career. I think he could still make 130, no problem. I say no problem, it'll obviously be hard. But if he really put his mind to it, he can move back down. And then that would take away, people say the rehydration clauses, he's a weight bully, all this. If he moved back down, all of that talk goes out the window. Then the final option is move up to 140 and fight Devin Haney. I don't think that's a good idea for a number of reasons. If he moves to 140 in his next 3 fights, I don't think we should ever see Tank versus Inoue. Inoue's too small for 135. So if Tank did move back to 130, Inoue's just moved up to 126. That's in the works to talk about him and Nick Ball. I never want to see Tank versus Inoue at 135 because I think it's way too big a stretch for Inoue. But I would love to see Tank and Inoue get a lot at 130. So I don't want to see him to move to 140, even if it's for a fight versus Devin Haney or a big name. Yeah, I don't think he'll move back down to 130, mate, but I would love to see it. And the main reason I would love to see it is because I think it opens up the opportunity for the biggest fight in boxing to happen, which is Tank Davis versus Inoue. God damn, is that a fight? You know what I mean?
You reckon?
Oh, man. Again, I talk about the retirements. Take away, let's for a second, let's retire Usyk, let's retire Crawford, let's retire Beterbiev. Name me a bigger fight in boxing than Tank Davis versus Inoue. Like pound for pound, superstar in Japan, superstar globally, Tank sells tickets, all the rest. I don't know, mate. I mean, I'm racking my brain. I know AJ and Fury would be a massive fight, obviously, for the UK. But, there would always be that thing of, Usyk beat them both, so it's Usyk's leftovers. Tank's unbeaten, 96% knockout rate. Inoue's unbeaten, 98% knockout rate. I don't know that there is a better fight in boxing, man. But again, I don't want to see it any higher than 130 pounds. I think if it happens at 135, you're going to see something similar to Rigondeaux versus Loma. Obviously, two double Olympian gold medalists, 2 absolute genius boxers. But Rigondeaux just looked way too small at the weight. Way too small. And if they're going to fight, I want it to be a fair fight. Because, look, it's better for Tank too. Because if he does fight him at 135 and he wins, it's kind of like Canelo saying against Crawford. If Tank did beat Inoue at 135, he's never going to get the credit that win deserves. Because people say you're a weight bully, you were too big for the weight, Inoue looked tiny. Whereas if he did push himself and he got back down to 130, then it's a very, very makeable fight. Because anyway, Cessa's walking around weight is like 138, 139 pounds. Whereas Tank walks around, I think, at like 149 or 150. So yeah, it just, to me, it's a very, very unfair fight at 135. But at 130, it's the best fight in boxing. Absolutely.
Where's Tank rating your lightweight, 135 pound all time?
Uh,
Does he beat Duran?
no. I don't know. It's a
Duran's
really
way
good-
out there at lightweight, isn't he? Put in 70s, one he ruthless, one he.
Yeah, he was unbelievable. I mean, man, again, I think it's kind of similar. Like people have Tank now, or BoxRec have Tank at number 3 pound for pound. I have him between 5 and 6, and only for the reasons that I talked about. I think he does stack the deck in his favor, and he doesn't make things difficult on himself, which it's his right to do. But if you do that, people shouldn't be saying you're the pound for pound number 1 fighter in the world. You know, Usyk, look what Usyk has done, moved up all the rest. Tank all time. Yeah, mate, look, we need to see his next 2, 3, 4 moves, i.e. his next 2, 3, 4 fights. He can move up high on that list, but I think I don't think he's put himself through the wars as of yet. But he's got 3 struggles. He's been in jail. He's got out. He says he's a reinvigorated man. If he really puts himself, he puts himself into the hot fire, then he can move up that list. But I don't think you can make any logical argument right now for putting him ahead of Roberto Duran. I know people will say, oh, he's undefeated and all the rest. Duran never shied away from any fight ever, you know. And he just did things in there that just didn't make sense to the eye. You know what I mean? Like, just fought in close. Oh, it was just unbelievable. So no, I would have Duran well ahead of him as it stands today. Well ahead of him.
Okay. Well, I've got Usyk and OU. It's a coin toss for them two because they've gone through weight divisions, haven't they?
Yes, sir.
Then you've got Tank, better be Bam Bam, and Bivol all vying for third, in my opinion.
What about
Opatia.
Well, what about, sorry, you said it's a toss up between Inoue and Usyk. What about Crawford? Where do you put him in that top 5?
He's retired, and I keep hearing he's retired. That's why I've not got him in my list. That's what I keep hearing.
Did the Madrimov fight get cancelled?
Yeah, but I've seen someone today that's saying he's had enough, so I don't know what to make of it all, to be honest with Crawford. He's parked up, isn't he?
Jeez, here, I'm just Googling this now. Retirement.
When was his last fight, Crawford? When did he last fight?
Fought Earl Spence in October. What was it? Jesus, nearly 2 years ago now.
October 22.
I think so. I'm not 100% sure. I can double check. But look, he's been out of the ring well over a year. Let me see here. Well, no, look, he's still scheduled to fight Madrimov. You know, they're doing the Riyadh season fight or event in Los Angeles.
Well, you put it's Crawford, then Usyk, and I know you, but I will led to believe that he parked up now. Well, if he's in mix, because if they're out over a year, they take him off BoxRec, don't they?
Which is fair. Yeah, look, we'll see. I mean, look, if I think Crawford beats Madrimov. Put it this way, I think Crawford beats anybody up to 160 pounds until I see something otherwise. I think he beats Madrimov, and then obviously if he does, he wins a belt at 154, and then he probably tries to unify that division as well. So yeah, look,
a year out at ring next month. Crawford, a year out at ring next month. He's got Madrid up next. 10-0. I mean, he's fighting a guy 10-0. I mean, what's all that about?
Yeah, no, I know. I thought it was over a year. Geez, that Errol Spence fight seems like a lifetime ago. Yeah. It's a long time. But I mean, I think 154 is there for the taking, man. If I'm being honest with you, I think Tim Tszyu's been very unlucky. I think you know, we all want fighters to be warriors, but I think his team should have. I think he should have won by technical decision. I think they should have pulled him out with that cut against Fondora. You know, respect to him, he didn't. No, he's been pulled out of the Virgil Ortiz Jr. fight. Would have been maybe fight of the year. So I think Tim Tszyu's been unlucky. But I think Crawford finds a way. I know Fondora is a monster in terms of how big he is and tall he is, but I think Crawford finds a way to beat him. as Tim Tszyu was until he got that cut. I think Crawford. I think Crawford schools Jermell Charlo. Oh, absolutely. I say school. I mean, Jermell Charlo's a good fighter. I just don't think he's on. I just don't think he's on Crawford's level. Not at all. And I think I think when the light shines, I know the Canelo fight was a big jump up, but I think when the lights shone brightest on him, he completely capitulated. That Canelo performance was terrible. I know people say Canelo was good, he whatever, but he got knocked down and it just looked like he was just happy to make it to the end of the fight. And obviously then in his post-fight press conference, he said, "Look, I made $5 million. I'm happy. All the rest." I know Terry's wild high on Charlo, but I don't put him in the same. I don't put him in the same class as Terence Crawford. I think Terence Crawford would use and abuse him in there. And
He's
maybe
in love with
retire him.
Charlo, isn't he, Terry?
He loves.
Terry,
Terry
you're in
loves
love with Charlo. Give your head a shake, lad.
Oh, look. I'm not saying Charlo's not a scrub. That's not what I'm saying at all. And he did overcome adversity. You know what I mean? Like he had that loss against Castagna, and he went in there and knocked him out. Or was that Tony Harrison? Either way, he's crossed bridges before, but you can only really go on the last performance. He looked shocking against Canelo. He looked after a couple. He looked after 6 rounds, 7 rounds. He looked like he was just happy to see the 12th bell or hear the final bell. Terence Crawford doesn't have that in him. Yeah, I think Terence Crawford would stop Charlo inside of 8 rounds. Absolutely.
Okay, then. Well, listen, we've got 3 minutes left. Do you want to finish off on Crusher? It's now 2 years since his first dope test, beginning of July. Well, it's 2 weeks off his first test 2 years ago. We're still no wiser to what's happened. Do you think he's become the forgotten man, Crusher, now that Eddie's living it big in Saudi?
Yeah, he has. He absolutely has. I mean, look, there's probably a few quid for him to squeeze out of it yet. They're talking about the Pacquiao fight still and stuff. Yeah, I think he's a forgotten man. I think Eddie's got his priorities in some other places. I think Eddie probably behind closed doors, he would admit that he regrets the way he handled it. He shouldn't have, kind of went into bat as deep for him as he did. I think obviously Crusher's made a fool of himself countless times, and through all this. I saw a picture actually on Twitter there during the week of he went to meet Dr. Oz again, apparently this past week. Now I don't know what they were speaking about, but I never ever thought for a second. I'll try and confirm before we get on next that it was real. But I never thought we would see Dr. Oz and Crusher in the same photo ever again, or in the same room or in the same orbit. So if that photo is real, that's not a good look either, So I don't know, mate. I think Crusher's fizzling out, sharpish. Maybe there's a couple of. Go ahead. Sorry.
Good.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. This will be a telling tale, or it'll be in the history books as not to handle a drug scandal. But even we talk about the likes of Gad and stuff. I hear people talk about Gad's this renowned, or he was a great journalist back in the day and all this. He was on TalkSport there a wee while ago, him and Adam Catterall, and they were talking about Crusher and how this will all play out. And Gad said, he goes, "I don't know, I think this might end well badly for him." And Adam Catterall's like, "Well, what do you mean by that?" He goes, "Well, the way Eddie Hearn's in bed now with the Saudis, I think they might try and make an example out of him." He's talking about Crusher. Now, this is the same Saudi regime that are putting Jarrell Miller on every single card. Now, whether I like,
might have Crusher out there then.
But he was saying the opposite. He's saying they might make an example out of him and throw the book at him. Now, whether I like Gad or not, or I think he's a grease merchant's one thing, but people talk about him being a renowned journalist and stuff. What sort of homework is this fella doing? Do you know what I mean? Like, did he forget about I don't know, mate. Just go away and do your homework if you're going to be on TalkSport. So we'll leave it at that, Chief. I'm going to have an ulcer.
All right, then. Well, listen, thanks for coming on, Adam. You've been a star.
Pleasure, Russell. Always. Sure. Look, I'll talk to you, and we'll catch up on here again soon. All right, brother.
Cheers, mate.
Good man. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment and join our sister channel, Porky's Corner International. Booyaka! Go on, peace out.